She is normally quite unemotional, but she becomes a different person when it comes to medicines and poisons. She is the daughter of a courtesan and the military strategist Lakan. Jinchi played the part of a eunuch in the rear palace. However, his true identity is the emperor's younger brother. Secrets surround his birth. He was so beautiful that some people said if he were a woman, he could bring the country to its knees. Gaeshun was formerly Jinchi's attendant and minder. Now his son plays that role and Gaeshun serves the emperor personally. Basin is Gaeshun's son and Jinchi's attendant. Lakan is Maomao's father. An eccentric military strategist wears a monocle. He is extraordinarily capable but not easy to deal with. He is deeply in love with his daughter, but Maomao hates him. Lahan is Maomao's cousin. He is actually the son of Lakan's half-brother, but Lakan has adopted him. Another eccentric, Liuhumin, Maomao's granduncle and adoptive father, was an extremely accomplished physician. Consort Lishu was one of the emperor's 4 most favored consorts. She was very young and still timid. Ardua was formerly one of the emperor's 4 favored consorts. She had a son with his majesty. Once Suhari was the granddaughter of the former emperor and a survivor of the otherwise exterminated Shi clan. She is knowledgeable in the art of apothecary. She is also known as Shisui. She is the half-sister of Suhari. She was formerly one of the emperor's 4 favored consorts. As a member of the Shi clan, she fled the rear palace, which was considered a serious crime. It is currently unknown whether she is still alive. The empress regnant is the mother of the previous emperor and the grandmother of the current emperor. A powerful woman conducted politics in place of her son. Dark rumors persist about her. She is deceased, the former emperor. A variety of ugly names circulate for him. He is called the idiot emperor, the fool prince, and a pedophile. He is deceased. Empress Jayukayo hails from the west. She was once one of the emperor's 4 favored consorts, and now she is his empress. She has 1 son and 1 daughter with the current emperor. Her son is the current heir apparent. The madam is the old lady who runs the Verdigris house, the brothel where Maomao has her shop. A real miser. The 3 princesses Perrin, Maymay and Joker. These 3 were the most popular courtesans at the Verdigris house. Chu Yu was a child survivor of the Shi clan. He was given the resurrection drug, and as a result half his body is paralyzed. He has lost his memories of everything before he took the medicine. Lihaku is a soldier and an acquaintance of Maomao. Head over heels in love with Perrin. Prologue. Geez, how are you going to survive if that is all it takes to send you running? The voice was friendly enough, but its owner was looking down at him. He was collapsed on his knees on the ground. He could see a young figure on the fence holding an apple. The figure took a bite of the hard fruit and a flash of white teeth appeared. Why, thought the boy on the ground. He had disappeared among the trees, eluded his pursuers. So why could this kid find him so easily? Shut up. I know that, better go back then. You've got the serving women crying, the youth chuckled. So it had come to this, being looked down upon from the lofty heights of the fence. It made him so mad. What about you, he wanted to ask. He wore a commoner's outfit, clambering on the fence like a monkey while munching on an apple. He should forget about crying. If the serving women saw him cry, they would faint. It's an important job, just do it already. Monkey jumped down off the fence and stood in front of him, then mussed his hair as if the kid had the right to do so. Monkey was only a year older than him. He pushed the hand away, disliking being treated like a child. The other youth laughed and wiped the half-eaten apple on a sleeve, then he held it out. Your leftovers. Hey, you do not have to eat it. There was a pause and then he grabbed the apple. He bit into the side that did not have any teeth marks in it. The crunchy fruit filled his mouth with its flavor, both sweet and sour at the same time. He looked up and saw the kid in the commoner's garb grinning at him. I want to at least choose my own partner, he said. Not likely, you get all the nicest stuff. What if you picked somebody awful? There would be a lot of unhappy people. She was older than my mother. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, Monkey said shyly, looking genuinely unsure. He knew that was true. Yes, even he knew that much. But he was still a child, so acceptance didn't come easily. Monkey said, grow up. He replied, you're one to talk, you're only a year older than me. He wanted to ask, what do you think makes you a grown-up? Would that mean Monkey could go calmly along with a match like that? All right, fine, he said. I've decided. Decided what? He raised his finger, then pointed directly at the faux commoner. My partner for tonight, excuse me. A sardonic smile meant to hide embarrassment. Chapter 1 Locusts. Morning was a lazy time in the pleasure district. These caged birds had been singing until dawn. When the customers finally went home, their obsequious masks came off. For a brief time, until the sun was high in the sky, they would sleep like logs. Maomao left her little shack, yawning. She could see steam rising from the verdigris house. The men servants were likely working hard to ready the morning baths. The chilly air prickled her skin. The sun was late in rising. Her simple cotton overgarment wasn't enough to keep her warm, so she rubbed her hands together. Her breath fogged in front of her. It had been a month since she left the rear palace, and the New Year's celebrations had subsided. Her old man had stayed at the palace, which is why Maomao was here in the pleasure quarter. Back in the shack, a child was still sleeping. Maomao resolved to leave him that way, knowing it was the only part of the day when he would be quiet. The boy's name was Chu Yu. He was a survivor of the Shi clan, which had otherwise been exterminated. He was currently living with Maomao. It was a long story. This little boy supposedly came from a decent background, but Maomao almost wondered whether he was truly the son of luxury. He was astonishingly adaptable. He could lie there snoring away in that drafty old hovel. Oh yeah, Grams wanted to see me, Maomao thought. She could get some hot water from the verdigris house while she was at it. In weather like this you could not go bathing in cold water. Shivering, Maomao stopped in front of the well and lowered the bucket. Then she started hauling it up again. When she arrived at the verdigris house, the courtesans had finished their baths. They were having the apprentices dry their hair. Well, you are early today, said Maomao. Her hair was still glistening wet. She was one of the establishment's 3 princesses and also effectively Maomao's older sister. The most prominent courtesans bathed first, so she was already finished. Oh, hey sis, do you know where Grams is? The old lady is talking with the owner over there. Thanks. It was the elderly madam who ran the day-to-day affairs of the verdigris house, but she did not own the place. The man who oversaw things stopped by about once a month. He would talk with the madam about the brothel, the courtesans, and anything else he was thinking about. The owner was a man just entering old age. He was completely impressed by the madam, who had known him since he was young. In fact, some gossips whispered that he was the child of the madam and the last owner, but nobody knew the truth. Running a brothel was not the man's only concern. He had other, more legitimate businesses as well, and at first glance he looked perfectly ordinary. He was such a soft touch that one wondered if he was really safe being a part of this world, and one worried for the brothel's affairs if the old madam should ever leave them. He's not here with another of his bizarre business ideas, is he? Who can say? Maomao shrugged expansively. At that exact moment the madam's voice boomed around the building. You idiot, you complete, total, utter fool. What do you think you're doing? The sisters looked at each other. Guess you were right, Maomao said. Guess so. What was the man up to this time? A few minutes later the madam emerged from an inner room. The nearly elderly man, looking thoroughly cowed, followed her. Everyone called him Mr. Owner. It was the only way to remember who actually owned the place. Considering the way Mr. Owner was rubbing his head, it looked like he'd gotten a good rap from the madam's knuckles. Oh, Maomao, you're here, the madam said. Yeah, Grams, I am. You asked me to come, remember? Yes, of course. Damn it, she forgot. Maomao was sure she had only said the words to herself, yet the next instant she felt knuckles smacking the top of her head. Sometimes she wondered if the old lady wasn't actually a mountain spirit who could read minds. Mr. Owner looked at Maomao with sympathy. He reminds me of the quack. If she was experiencing déjà vu, maybe it was because the 2 men looked somewhat similar. He knew that look. She wanted to take a bath. And have breakfast too, I suppose. Bring the kid with you. Someone is in a good mood. I do have my days, the old woman said, then she all but strutted over toward the kitchen. I will show myself out then, Mr. Owner said, and he promptly did just that. Too bad, Maomao thought, watching him go. He usually stays for breakfast. No one said a word. Everyone in the dining area was struck dumb. Finally Perin, sitting beside Maomao, announced, awful. Her face was a scowl of disgust. She was considered one of the 3 most lovely flowers to bloom at the Verdigris house, but if any of her callers had seen her with that look on her face, all their fantasies would have been dashed. As for Maomao, she looked like she'd found a maggot in her drinking water. The table was long enough to seat about 20 people. Everyone had a bowl full of congee, another of soup, and a third small bowl. 3 large trays were placed at intervals along the table. At the Verdigris house, meals usually consisted of a single bowl of soup. Sometimes, if you were lucky, there was a modest side dish. Today the small bowls contained raw fish and pickled vegetables. 2 of the trays had separate side dishes, a very generous breakfast by normal standards. Something dark glinted on the trays. Bugs that farmers usually treated as pests were being served as food here. They were locusts. Grams, can you explain this? Quiet and eat. It's a gift from Mr. Owner. Maomao could understand why the old lady was upset. Mr. Owner had other business concerns besides running this brothel. These were legitimate businesses that allowed him to hold his head high in polite company. He was not much of a talented businessman. The harvest was poor this year, and the farmers wept until he relented. The madam angrily poured black vinegar on her congee. Mr. Owner dealt in crops. Farmers in this nation gave a portion of their harvest as tax. The state also purchased another part of the yield. Mr. Owner's business involved trading in what remained. I don't care if they cried their eyes out. What was he thinking, letting the seller dictate the price? He won't be able to sell this stuff either, and look at it all. A mountain of fried locusts towered on the tray, seasoned as best as could be managed with soy paste and sugar. He said he had bought too much that it wouldn't keep and would go to waste. He thought he ought to just throw it out instead of using sugar on it. Sugar was expensive, and here he had cooked bugs in it. Who was going to eat that? No one, that is who. That is why he had so many left over, and that is how they made their way to the Verdigris house's table. Mr. Owner had considered eating the costs himself, so to speak, but he had another concern. He had a wife who did not think highly of the Verdigris lady's profession, and he had evidently chosen the madam's favour over his wife's rage. Maomao scratched the back of her neck. She was used to food that wasn't very refined, but even she wasn't thrilled when faced with this mountain of insects. After eating 2 or 3 of them, she would be ready to say she was full. The courtesans, who were even less accustomed to such simple food, frowned openly. They refused to even touch the bugs. Hurry up and eat, someone said. You won't stop talking about wanting side dishes. Well, here you go. 5 each, eat up, the old woman growled. Everyone looked at each other. Finally, the first pair of chopsticks reached out toward the large dish. Well now, Maomao was surprised by the first person who put one of the locusts into their mouth. As they chewed on the bug, a look of revulsion came over their faces. It's not very good. It's kind of crunchy, like it's empty. This assessment was given in a high-pitched voice, for it belonged to Chu Yu. Maomao had been sure the young lordling, with his pampered upbringing, would have resisted putting such food in his mouth, but apparently that wasn't the case. Perhaps losing his memories had removed any aristocratic restraint, or maybe he had actually eaten something similar before. It could also simply be a child's natural adaptability. Wow, I am amazed you can stomach that, said Perrin, who was sitting beside Maomao. It is not great, but it is certainly edible. It is super crunchy though. Crunchy, that made some sense. You removed the innards of locusts before cooking them, so they were hollow on the inside. Therefore Maomao really thought nothing of it as she reached for a locust and unenthusiastically took a bite. HRK, yes, it was crunchy all right. It seemed much more hollow inside than the locust she had eaten before, even though this one had been simmered. Perhaps it was because the carapace was the only thing in her mouth, an outer layer even emptier than a typical locust preparation. Chu Yu was busy bargaining with Perrin. She said, "Do you want me to eat yours? I will help you out if you give me a mooncake." Maomao got a firm grip on his head and shoved him down in his seat. Ow, oh wow, Chu Yu yelped. Maomao took one of the locusts in her chopsticks and glowered at it. She had a bad habit. Once something had captured her interest, she simply could not let it go. "I want you to do a little shopping for me." After breakfast was over, the madam finally remembered why she had summoned Maomao in the first place. She wanted to send her on an errand to the market. It occupied the city's central thoroughfare. The courtesans were not allowed to leave the brothel. However, the menfolk around here were too dense to trust with the shopping. There were a lot of strange and unusual products available at the market. There were also a lot of con artists looking to rip you off. The market was an inexpensive place to sell goods. You didn't need to maintain a storefront there, but it also meant there was nothing to easily identify the less reputable sellers and places to avoid. You had to be alert to find worthwhile purchases. I want you to get some incense. The usual stuff, the old woman said. She meant the mild incense that was always burning in the entryway of the verdigris house. It was a consumable, so she wanted to get it as cheaply as possible. However, she couldn't be burning low-quality stuff at the door to her establishment either. Yeah, sure. What is it worth to you? Maomao stuck out her hand, but the madam smacked it away. Breakfast and bathwater for 2 people. Does that sound fair? Damn stingy old hag, Maomao thought, but she agreed. Hey Freckles, buy me one of those. Absolutely not. Chuyu was pointing to a stall full of toys as Maomao hauled him away, pulling him by the sleeve. She had fully intended to do the shopping alone. However, the little boy threw himself on the ground and begged and tantrumed. In the end, she had to take him with her. Now she was walking through the market, dragging him along. A single huge street cut through the center of the capital. Carriages ran back and forth along it. At the far end was the home of those who lived above the clouds, the palace. Every day the street held a busy market. Sometimes looking at the palace made Maomao feel as if she had only dreamed of working there. But the fact that Chuyu was with her now proved she had lived within its walls. That was why she had become involved in the series of events that brought him to her. The Shi clan rebellion had also affected the market to some extent. The northern regions produced grain crops and timber products. Maomao could not shake the sense that fewer places than usual were selling these things. Instead, she saw a lot of dried fruits and textiles that came from the south and west. There was something else too, something that brought a scowl to Maomao's face when she saw it. It was simmered insects for sale. Locusts again, I guarantee that stuff sucks. Who would actually buy it? Chuyu said. Maomao slapped her hand over his mouth and dragged him away. The stall owner glared fearsomely at them as they went. What did I do? Chuyu demanded. It is true, isn't it? Just shut up, Maomao said, looking at him almost as grimly as the shopkeeper had. This was why she hated children, she thought. Hollow shells like that are never going to be good. Then Chuyu said more quietly, man, so much for the harvest this year. Maomao blinked. Wait, what did you say? That stuff is going to suck. No, after that. Chuyu looked at her curiously. That the harvest is toast this year. Yes, how do you know that? How do I know that? Chuyu scratched his head with his right hand. His left hand hung limply at his side, spasming occasionally. Chuyu had died once and then come back to life. This experience left him partially paralyzed and without many of his memories. He said, I don't remember. I just remember hearing that crunchy bugs mean the harvest will be bad. He held his head, humming thoughtfully. Maomao wondered if a good shake might help him remember something. He was technically on loan to her, so she didn't want to be too rough. However, if Chuyu was correct, it could be a serious matter. She smacked him on the forehead just hard enough to keep him from getting any stupider. He puffed out his cheeks in protest. You know, I think I might be able to remember, he said. Really? Maomao asked. Chuyu quickly looked around at the nearby shops. Yeah, if you buy me something, I'll remember, he said, looking perfectly satisfied with himself. Maomao didn't say anything, but she pulled the corners of Chuyu's mouth as far apart as they would go. A new tooth was just visible in the gap between his front teeth. Once a little shit, always a little shit, Maomao thought. Remember that, she thought to herself. Chuyu was drawing happily, despite the lump on his head. To Maomao's surprise, he had wanted paper and a brush, not a toy. She had agreed to let him use one of her brushes. The paper, however, turned out to be surprisingly expensive. Perhaps something of his good upbringing stayed with him. He could tell the difference between low-grade paper and the fancy kind. He went around the shop, mumbling, this is no good and that is no good, until he found the most expensive paper on display. Maomao wasn't about to let him boss her around, so she picked something which, although not as nice, was perfectly usable. Paper was expensive for something you used up, but not impossibly so. She hoped that as it became more common, it would also get cheaper. Chu Yu looked very happy clutching his sheaf of paper. She decided to forgive him with just a single knuckle to the head. Chu Yu had been drawing busily since they had gotten back to the verdigris house. He was in the shop with Maomao. She was busy making the abortifacients and cold medicines she had been asked for. She had been told to keep him close. This was so he would not cause trouble for the apprentices, some of whom were about his age, or the courtesans. When she returned from delivering the medicines to a nearby brothel, she discovered a crowd at the entrance to the verdigris house. Courtesans, apprentices, and even some of the menservants were present. What is going on? She wondered, squinting to see better. She then discovered that the crowd had formed around her obnoxious brat. Wondering what he had done this time, she hurried over to him. The crowd parted until she was standing in front of the little boy.